What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another knife review slash overview for your entertainment. This is the Kershaw Link. Let me get the model number exactly right and read it off the box. 1776BRZBW. Bronze and black wash is what that is standing for. This is an assisted knife that runs about $45 right now. I still can find it on DLT Trading, which is where my wife found it. If you didn't watch that video, I told my wife to pick out any knife that she could find around $50, preferably a little bit under. It's almost kind of a challenge to see if she could pick something that was good, because she we have this thing where she gets me a knife every year for our anniversary, and I feel like, as I've blabbed on years and years and years about, you know, premium materials and all this stuff, she's picked up on that, and it's easy for her to choose knives that are $100, $200, $300. But I wanted to challenge her and see if she could find something good under $50, and she did. This is a USA-made knife, running 45 bucks in 420 HC steel, 6061 T6 aluminum handles, and it's a model that apparently a lot of people like. I knew that the Link existed, but it wasn't a knife that initially compelled me, so I didn't, you know, I never made an effort to grab one for myself. I was not aware that they made one in this exact configuration, though it appears to not be a thing that's in regular production anymore. I don't want to say that, you know, I think you can still get the Link regularly, but this particular version is still available at the time of this video from DLT Trading, but I can't seem to find it many other places. So really interesting knife. We're going to talk about it today. Let's get some measurements here real quick. The overall length of this knife coming in at about 7.5 inches. How about the blade? Blade length on this guy from tip to scale, 3 1/4. Cutting edge. It's one of those knives where to the scale, you know, yeah, it's 3 1/4 both to the scale and the cutting edge because of how the scale dips up right there. But you can see there, nice belly on the blade. So that's helping with blade length there. Let's do some size comparisons here real quick. How about up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. Sorry. Line them up perfectly there. How about up against the Spyderco Paramilitary 2? PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Hinder XM18? XM18 coming in at 8.25 inches overall. How about up against the... We don't have the Ritter Hogue out here today. How about up against the Spyderco Delica? Spyderco Delica coming in at 7 inches overall. I almost always do a size comparison with the Benchmade Griptilian, and then I say, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, because it's a good 8-inch size comparison, and I just didn't bring it out here today, so sorry. Hopefully those other ones are good enough to give you an idea. Let's go ahead and weigh it real quick. Come on now. There we go. 4.8 ounces. Keep in mind this does have full steel liners on it. 4.8 ounces, so just shy of 5 ounces. That's going to be heavy to some people. Some people aren't going to care. I'm on the side of some people who don't care. I don't think that's heavy enough to sway my decision. Let's talk about the anatomy of this knife. What we have here is it's not really a sheep's foot. It's a drop point that kind of looks like it wants to be a sheep's foot. Reminds me a lot of the ZT0095, that blade shape. In fact, I think it's extremely similar to that. Lots of cutting belly and very thin on the starting thickness. So I mean, even with that flat and that swedge there, the edge feels like it gets very, very thin. Blackwashing on this knife looks really nice. You know, blackwashing is not something that I particularly go for myself, but, you know, on a more expensive knife. But to flash up a less expensive knife, in this case an under $50 knife, I think this looks really nice, honestly. This is an assisted opening knife. It's got a flipper tab. You've got bronze, more orange anodized aluminum scales. And, you know, I said this when we talked about this knife. This is not a color scheme of knife that I would normally be interested in. But getting it and handling it, and just, like I said, kind of just to spice up something that's less expensive. We see so much satin and black in the under $50 knife world, this is nice, you know. I mean, this is a USA made knife. It's got a cool color on it. The blade looks cool. It just, I don't know. You know, I'm kind of compelled by it, despite it being the exact opposite of what I would normally buy for myself. You know, I hate orange more than anything else, but I don't know. This is kind of cool. It's a softer, it's a more bronzy orange. You know, blade steel is 420 HC. That's a steel that Buck uses all the time. A lot of people really like 420 HC. It's not a powder steel. It's not a premium steel, but it does have good chromium content, so it is a stainless steel. And people say it sharpens up really well and holds a reasonable edge. So I think that's a pretty good choice for this. You know, I don't really have a problem with 420 HC. You know, people tend to prefer D2 or that 12C27N. Is that a Sandvik steel? Does Kershaw use that? I think they do. I want to say that's the base steel on the Kershaw Blur, the non-S30V version, but this is one of the least expensive all USA made knives that I'm aware of. And I'm sure there are other ones. You can see there the flag, and then it also says Made in USA right there, Kai USA. So that's pretty cool. You've got a nice Torx head pivot right there. Teeny tiny Torx head body screws, that's just fine. A nice large lanyard hole, and the position for the pocket clip to be mounted on the left side. You've got a backspacer back here running in between those steel liners. Looks nice, provides a little bit of traction there. Everything lines up really, really well. I'm a big fan of full steel liners that come all the way out to the outside. There is no milling here, which is why it weighs almost 5 ounces. The knife came perfectly centered and is locking up at a healthy 50%. Given the thickness of the liners and the thickness of the blade, I think that makes sense. The backside looks nice. The pocket clip looks nice. You're going to have about that much of it sticking up out of your pocket, which is fine. I think the lanyard hole's in a great position. You know, I don't have a problem with really anything as far as like the position of things, how the hardware looks, the fit and finish all the way around is just excellent. I mean, man, the fit and finish on these inexpensive Kershaw knives is just awesome. Really, really impressive. The action's great, but it's assisted, so it's going to flip. It's running on phosphor bronze, as far as I can tell. Some of you guys like assisted knives, and some of you don't. I'm sure some of you want to know, you know, can it be de-assisted? I don't know if there's a detent ball and hole in there. A lot of these are just working on a torsion bar. So I don't know. I don't mind assisted knives. It's not, you know, when it's like a cheap assisted knife, I don't mind it. I'm not interested in like the expensive ZT assisted knives. I'm going to turn my camera just a little bit because I bumped it and it tilted. So let's move right there. There we go. Not a fan of the expensive ZT assisted knives, but I don't mind the assisted Kershaw knives. You know, if they're under $50 or so, I don't mind them. You know, it's just you pull down on that and it deploys on its own. Some people like the satisfaction of breaking the detent and using kinetic energy to get that blade out of there. You know, I get that. Believe me, I get it. You know, I love flipping my hinderers and my other flipper bearing knives, but I just don't mind. On a sub $50 knife, I don't mind. My wife likes assisted knives because she doesn't like to mess around. You know, her main knife that she carries is the one that I got her, the S30V Blur. And she said, I don't want to mess around with the... you know, finding the exactly the right position for my thumb. If I need that knife, I like to just pull it out of my purse and use it. And I get that, you know. I mean, her hands aren't the same size as mine. A lot of us, you know, when we flip knives, we brace. We find a bracing point. We find a position for these fingers. We find a bracing point with the knife in relationship with our palm. And then we flip it. Well, if your hands are medium to large size, it's much easier to find that ideal position on a knife that is not assisted than it is if you've got smaller hands. So I can understand, you know, people who have smaller hands, you just don't want to mess around with that. And to be, you know, the more I play with this, there is kind of an odd satisfaction with the spring just kind of firing the blade out. You know, it's not a whole lot different from like a push button automatic, but it is different. This is not a switchblade. This is an assisted knife. But I don't know. There's an odd satisfaction with assisted knives, and some of my first knives that like got me into nicer folding knives were assisted. You know, a lot of people start with assisted Kershaw knives and they get a good example of what having a good knife means, you know, and then they move on and they discover that a lot of the nicer knives are not assisted, are actually more manual. You know, and for example, like Chris Reeve knives are, I would say, extremely manual. You know, just barely one-hand operational. Not that sounds like I'm, you know, talking crap on Chris Reeve knives, but those knives are not about the deployment. They're simply about craftsmanship and ease of access, you know, to the blade, and it just, you know. You have to ask yourself in that situation, you know, is it really about the deployment, or is it more about getting the blade out and using it? You can subscribe to that line of thinking, or you can, you know, be like me and just enjoy kind of the fidget factor, whether it's assisted or it's not assisted. Sorry, that was a long, that was a long ranty thing there. I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking one way or the other. Anyways, back to the link. Ergonomically, this thing's great. I find myself in a situation where I can get my whole hand all the way around the knife, which is nice because it's only a 7.5-inch folding knife. But I do have to kind of rest my pinky finger up here, and it feels like it wants to slide off the end. That clip is a little bit pokey. Other than that, I don't feel any major hot spots or any hot spots at all, really. I can get my thumb up here. This is an ideal size for somebody who has medium to medium small sized hands. You know, it's going to feel like just the right size to you. And I think that's great. I also like that the pocket clip can be mounted for left or right-handed carry. Even though it is technically a right-handed liner lock, if I were left-handed, I wouldn't have an issue getting my thumb in there to close the knife. This knife is very easy to manipulate with one hand, and I think it's an excellent knife all the way around. In fact, I'm absolutely going to recommend this knife. This model in particular, I don't think is going to be around forever, or may actually be almost done now. But as far as the link goes, yeah, I'm a fan. This is a great knife. And by the way, it locks up super solid. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. And I think this blade shape, just about cut my finger off there. This blade shape is an excellent blade shape for general EDC stuff. I mean, the entire blade is belly. The curvature starts right here, right past the sharpening choil, I guess is what you'd call that. The reason I say it like that is because there are some situations where I know full well that, like, this knife does not have a sharpening choil. A lot of Spyderco knives in general, they just don't have them, which is a consistent complaint. This to me looks like a sharpening choil. But I don't know the exact definition of it. And I'm questioning that because I had somebody else point out, like, why do you call it forward choil and primary choil? It's either a finger choil or it's a sharpening choil. So now I'm questioning the whole spectrum of choil altogether and whether or not I know how to properly define it. Anyways, that doesn't really matter. The entire blade is belly and is going to be really good at a multitude of different EDC tasks. And you've got a nice pokey tip. If you need to dig splinters out of your finger or whatever else you like dig under your fingernails with a pointy tip, you know that's going to be very advantageous to you. Though it does hold reasonable thickness in relationship to the overall thickness of the blade all the way out to the tip, so I think it's going to be fairly strong. I think 420HC is going to serve people right, and I think a lot of you guys are really, really going to enjoy this knife if you go ahead and pull the trigger on it. I urge you to check it out. This version or whatever version the link is in standard production. Really cool knife. I hope it stays around for a while, you know. But anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was entertaining for you. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So please check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there is definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching. Flip it one more time there. And have a great day.